What's going on, guys? We're back. Another video. Thanks for checking it out. Check me out on Instagram, LapperFlips, LAPP3R30_flips. Thank you again for watching my past videos. It's truly humbling, fun to make the content, so doing it again. Playoffs are coming up, but I'll be honest, I'm not doing a heck of a lot for playoffs. I am buying some stuff on ComC, some smaller stuff in volume, and making a few bets on some guys, but I'm not as focused on that as I am on my purchases that I plan to make in the off season. And these things come in cycles, okay, in terms of when cards peak and when cards fall in value. So we have the playoffs coming up. A lot of guys who are in there are going to start peaking. You think of guys on the top teams or the teams who are expected to do really well in the playoffs. We should expect an increase in those guys. But having said that, I think there's more of an opportunity, or for me, or for what I'm focusing on anyways, is in the off season. So after the playoffs end, we see a cycle move down to a valley. And then as the season comes closer, we see hype build and people start getting excited for hockey again, and they want to buy their favorite players and their favorite team and do all that stuff. And that's more where I'm focusing my attention right now. So I'm sorry this isn't a playoff video. I may have some playoff picks coming up. I'll likely do next week since, the season's extended and we have a little bit of extra time. But right now, I'm still more focused on the off season. I'm going to enjoy the playoffs. I got some bets, but let me just show you what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's easier to see on graphs. So I got some graphs here for you using market movers and some awesome Windows Paint stuff. So we'll take a look at that and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
So when I talk about market cycles, why does it matter? Well, it matters because you need to have a plan. It's always best to have a strategy, to know when you plan to buy, have an exit point, have an exit strategy. I did another video where I talked about buying multiples, which means that you can exit at multiple points. I think is a great idea, especially for young guns, which are extremely liquid. So you're not stuck having to make a decision whether you sell your one card, at a high or low. But what's most important to me in the cycle is trying to buy at what is, closer to a bottom than a top. So we have a graph here of Miro Heiskanen, which I think is pretty representative of the cycle that I'm expecting to see moving forward. And this is really impacting all the decisions that I make. So I'm not super into the playoff buying right now. And, I think I'm going to watch this year and sort of see what happens. I do have some small plays that I'm making on strictly ComC, so I don't have to deal with the cards. I'm, buying players in bulk, typically inexpensive. I'm buying, piles of different guys, and hopefully I'll be able to sell them off, but the investment's relatively small, and, I'll get to play the game a little bit. But I'm not making any huge plays. But this is a cycle that I expect to see. So if we take a look back, we see that Miro was sitting at around, we'll call it about $7 there. Once the playoffs hit, Miro really started to take off. I mean, just a great talent. The guy's really dynamic, moves the puck really well, skates really well. It just does all the things that you look for in a defenseman in, 2020, 2021. So, no surprise here, Heiskanen through the playoffs saw a dramatic increase. They made it obviously all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, knocking out Colorado along the way. But that's the way that it goes. Anyways, so Dallas saw a nice run as the playoffs ended. Prices came down. Or Miro Heiskanen's price came down. And what you're going to see in a lot of the graphs that I show is this cycle is the same for everyone. Okay, so after the playoffs, we're seeing cards come down. There's a lull because everyone's out doing other things. They're not thinking about hockey. The season just ended. And then what happens is we get to a point after this blue box. This blue box is where I want to be buying. It's going to be the plan this year. This is what I'm preparing for more than playoffs. But this is where I want to be buying. And what happens after that? You see people start to speculate on Miro Heiskanen again. People start buying him because at this point here, December 8th, we're about 1 month out from puck drop. Okay, so the month before, people start speculating and we see, an increase, an upward trend here in Miro Heiskanen. Everyone's happy, everyone's excited, and then the puck drops and play goes on, and people are still enjoying Miro Heiskanen. And by the way, I'm just ignoring these low dots. Like, we're going to look at this on as a moving average. So after puck drops, we still see an increase in the player, and then we start to see it fall off. And this isn't just Miro Heiskanen. This cycle from the lull of, we'll call it the summer. This wasn't the summer because obviously we had a really weird hockey season, but we'll call it the summer. So this lull from the summer starts to increase about a month before the puck drops. And then when the puck drops, people are still excited and they're amped up for the first couple weeks. And then hockey is just hockey. Once you get to game 10, 12, 15, 20, maybe your team sucks, whatever it is, it's just hockey again, and people sort of lose interest in buying stuff. So we see a downward trend after that. All of the hype leading up and into the first month of the season is where all the action is. So the plan for me, in short, is to buy in the summer. Increase in an ideal world, I would see enough of an increase if I can catch a card that goes so low in the summer. By the time puck drops, if I can do 100% on that card, I mean, you're silly not to sell it, right? I'm going to be making plays where I have multiple cards, so it's not like I'm going to be having to make a decision where I'm selling one card and like, is this high or not? But what I will know, I'm going to go into the season with the knowledge that I'm not going to hold until game 30 or 40 of a player for the most part. We just see this too much. I've looked at a whole bunch of these graphs and they're all the same, where players, the hype builds up to the season, the puck drop, they may keep going up. Miro doesn't go up as much as other players, but he goes in the exact same pattern, and then, as attention fades away, they fall off. And we're going to take a look at some other charts that sort of further illustrate this. So we just took a look at Miro Heiskanen. This is the exact same graph that I had highlighted. Again, here is my buying window. And if we overlay Brayden Point on here, you see the exact same thing. It's a little bit less pronounced, but you see the same thing where his graph comes up leading up to the season, and then he just sort of fades away, and you would have a downward moving average at this point and an upward moving average at this point. And keep in mind here, this is where, right around where Tampa Bay won the Stanley Cup. At this point, this card was sitting around the $50 mark. So this card moved if the dots were here. It just doesn't go back that far, obviously. So if there were dots here, this is where Brayden Point would be, and he shimmied his way down to around, this $19 mark. Okay, and then so this would be, again, that's all part of the buying window right there. And then we see him climb as the season approaches and fall off in the same manner. So we're going to take a look at these guys here. We got we'll start off by looking at Leon Draisaitl. So Leon Draisaitl's graph, not quite as pronounced as Miro Heiskanen's, but what you see right here, this August the 5th, this is actually where Edmonton lost to Chicago in those mini series that they had in the 5-game series. So what's this guy's name? Leon comes from, down at about $120, and then the playoffs go on. And, he finishes off, hits a peak of about $245 here. And then again, so this is the exact opportunity that I'm looking for right here. Again, that's the buying time. And then what do we see? Well, Leon Draisaitl is a hell of a hockey player, so he's had a great year. And his card has continued to increase for the most part. This is puck drop right here. This would be my buying opportunity. This is where we have puck drop, and I would be, to be quite honest, you see this stuff after and you see all these dots, and that's fine, but I would be perfectly fine selling at this point right here, right after puck drop. $337, if I could have picked it up for somewhere in the $146 range, there's nothing wrong with that. That's 125% or so. That's some quick math. But what happens is Draisaitl plays really well. They're doing really well over there in Edmonton, and he continues, and he's seen a fall off. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Draisaitl in the playoffs, and how high he goes is obviously going to depend on how far Edmonton goes. But how much he drops off is going to be really interesting too for all of these guys. So it's these are the things that are fun for me to watch, guys, and these are things that impact my decision, and we'll lay Nathan MacKinnon over top of this. So MacKinnon and the Avs made it further in the playoffs, and you can see it by the graph right here. Here's the regular season leading up, and then here's where we hit the playoffs, and then here's obviously where Colorado gets dumped and they lose at the start of September. And Nathan MacKinnon's price to falls. This would be my buying opportunity at the end of playoffs. At this point, the Stanley Cup's been awarded, and we have a window here where we would look to buy. And Nathan MacKinnon goes up, and then the same thing happens. He falls off. We'll take a look at Nick Suzuki. So if we can buy Nick Suzuki theoretically in the offseason here, let's assume that we purchased him at somewhere around the $40 mark. We purchase him at $40, and then once we get to puck drop or a week into the season or so, he would be up at about $95. That's a pretty nice return. And then obviously he came up a little bit more, but he did the same thing that Leon did and that Nathan MacKinnon did, and that was fall in value. Okay, so I thought initially that the reason that MacKinnon went down in value was because they had a couple of COVID layoffs, and I thought the attention was just sort of lost on MacKinnon. And we all know, like, right now, I think he's sitting 6th or 7th in the league. He's been top 3 all year. He missed 2 games with injury, or I think he's 4 points out of 3rd place. So, he was number 3 in the league. It's a little bit of a slow start, but I thought that that's why his card was going down. But it turns out that the whole market did the same thing. And I'm going to assume that this is the exact same thing that we're going to see next year. Let's move on here. We'll take a look at some other random guys. Dominik Kubalik. So this is what happens. This was in the playoffs as well right here. We'll take a look. If you don't recall, this is when Edmonton and Chicago played, and Dominik Kubalik put up 2 goals and 3 assists and 5 points. When you do that in a playoff game, right at the start of playoffs, right in the very first game, your card goes from $16 to $45. That's just what happened. It quickly sold off, but sort of the same deal here. This would be the buying window. Again, Dominik Kubalik is 24 years old, so I thought his card was going to do better. He didn't really increase leading up to the season, but you can still see the same sort of somewhat upward trend here, and then you see him fall off after about a couple weeks into the season. People just decided Kubalik wasn't their guy, and I completely understand that. Miro, I'll lay that back over top. We'll put Rasmus Dahlin over top and have a look at that. So the same thing, we see Rasmus Dahlin price down over the summer. We see the hype lead up, and then we see him fall off. And you can say, okay, but Dahlin plays for Buffalo and all the stuff they had going on there. It doesn't matter. All the cards were doing this. This is the same cycle that everyone's been on. Of course, there's cards that have increased. You take Adam Fox, Drake Batherson had a big increase. We looked at him in another video. Those things happen for sure. But for the most part, again, I'm not even worried so much about what the card does months into the season. I want to buy it at the bottom when they're not playing. And ideally, I would like to sell that card or look to sell it right after the puck drops and not have to expect anything from the player, because we keep seeing this downward trend after in the wider market. We'll lay Rantanen over top here. So Mikko has seen more of an upward trend. I still don't think people know how good Mikko is, but that's okay. And that he's somewhat of an outlier, but this does happen. Cards are down. If I was buying Mikko back here, I actually was buying Mikko all through here for a few bucks lower than this graph shows. This graph starts at about $16. No, that's about where I was buying them, was $16, and this price was the same through these months here. Remember, guys, these are US dollars. So I was buying Mikko Rantanen between 17 and $26 Canadian. Pretty much all of them. I picked up about 35 or 37, sent some to PSA. I still have about 15 here. I'm hoping to sell off in the playoffs, hoping that the Avs make a big run. But, you know, I got sort of lucky in buying those things. All I knew is how good Mikko was and that the market didn't seem to see it. And, I've been pretty fortunate in that. So I guess this whole part has been just like a sick brag. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to be, but this is more just to illustrate that cards do continue to go up. But had I sold my Mikos over here at $32 US, 34, which would be 45, I'm buying a $20 card and selling it for 45. There's nothing wrong with that. We'll take a look at Jack Hughes here. His card held very steady. So I expect to see this out of some of the rookies this year. Like Kirill Kaprizov is one. Tim Stützle, Alexis Lafreniere. I don't think that their bottom is going to be much lower than they are. I'm going to be watching. If you take a look on ComC, you can actually get Stützle at a really good price right now. Same with Kaprizov. Kaprizov's down to about $100 US on ComC, and I think you can get Stützle for about half that at $50. Lafreniere, I'm not sure what he's at, but you notice that Jack Hughes held pretty steady, and I think it's just that rookie hype, because over the summer he's still a rookie. He hasn't played his second season yet, and I think the attention still stays on those rookies. But that's what I think. What do you think? Do you think that, first of all, do you think that like Stützle and Kaprizov are going to hold their value over the summer? Remember, last year was a short off season too. This is going to be a longer off season, and there's going to be more time. I think more time means more opportunity and less attention to the cards, which means you'll see prices fall. This is what I'm banking on. This is what I'm making my decisions based on. So I just wanted to give you guys sort of that inside scoop. So anyways, Jack Hughes right here, which is really interesting. We see the same thing a month leading up to playoffs. This is where everyone's happy and getting excited about playoffs, and then the puck drops. And Jack Hughes sees a massive spike. Why does Jack Hughes see a massive spike? I don't know if you guys remember this, but if we take a look at his first game, he had 2 points, 1 point his second game, 3. So he put up 6 points in his first 3 games. And that's what the chart does. Okay, so we saw him blast off, and then we saw the exact same thing. Then we just saw him fall back down to earth. So we're going to take a look at some guys here who have seen increases. Okay, so I was buying Adam Foxes for $10 all day, and I had held them. I knew Adam Fox was a good player, but that wasn't even why I bought this card. I just didn't know. I don't buy defensemen very often. I don't think that the market cares a heck of a lot about defensemen unless you're of the caliber of Adam Fox and Cale Makar, and we've even seen Quinn Hughes fall off. I'm just not a lover of defensemen. The reason why I bought a whole pile of Adam Foxes is because I was buying them for $10 Canadian and grading them, and I still don't even have them back yet, obviously, but they were selling for $150 Canadian. So I can pay $10 for the card, have it graded for about $30 Canadian, spend $40 and sell it for 150 Canadian. So Adam Fox was a grading play for me, but he turned out to be a really good play in terms of investment and asset increase. So he worked out really well, and he deserves it. I didn't know that he would put up the amount of points that he did, but he did. Drake Batherson, same thing. So we see once he started producing, we see a quick increase, and then we see him even pull back and decline. Jordan Kyrou, same thing. We see an increase right here at the start of the season. We see the hype build, and we see him fall off. Almost in line, except Batherson took off a little bit later, and then we see it fall off. Adam Fox, we see him take off, and then we see him fall off. So in closing, guys, this is what I'm thinking. This is where my mind's at. I'm not thinking so much about the playoffs right now. I'm thinking about buying in this window right here that leads up to the season. I showed you why, and I think this is a huge opportunity. And maybe you don't think that that's what's going to happen to the market over the summer, and that's okay. Let me know in the comments, like, what do you think is going to happen in the summer? Are the prices going to drop a lot? Are they going to hold? um, I'm expecting them to drop, and again, I'm making a lot of decisions, and I'm planning to spend a good part of my bankroll in the summertime purchasing these cards that I will be selling in October, assuming that the season starts then, and not even waiting until game 10 or 15. I'm just going to have them listed, or auction them off, and get those things going. If I can do a quick 100% on a card, that's going to be the plan. I don't know who those guys are yet, but I'm sure I'll have videos on that. But that's what I'm thinking, guys. So if nothing else, I hope this gives you something to think about. I think that the graphs really help to illustrate the point. So maybe to get you thinking, maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you won't. That's okay, guys. I mean, I'm fine with that. And if you're holding cards, as I always say, and you're like, well, maybe I should sell it off in the playoffs and buy it back in the summertime, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. But if it's a PC card, don't worry about it. Just hold it. If that's it. The stuff that I say here isn't for PC cards or for cards you plan on holding long term. This is for cards that are like these Miros and like these commodity style Young Guns and Future Watch autos. Okay. So thanks for listening, guys. That's all I got. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment below. Hit the like button. Subscribe up, please. I'm above 300, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Check me out on Instagram, LapperFlips, LAPP3R30_flips. Check you on the flip.